Hi, and welcome to On the Sunny Side. On the Sunny Side is a digital TV format by the German-speaking edition of Forbes. It's a weekly format where I, Sunny Grineveld, meet guests from around the world, researchers, entrepreneurs, executives that in many ways help shape the digital world and the digital economy, and together use technology for good. Now, in today's episode, I am honored to be meeting Vera Zakem. Vera has spent her entire career at the intersection of democracy, society, and technology, most notably on the topic of influence campaigns. And she's advised many organizations on global challenges. She's worked on strategy at Twitter. She's worked for many international governments. She's worked for the US government, advising them. And today she has her own consultancy and is also a senior tech and policy advisor for technology for global security. Vera, welcome to On the Sunny Side.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to get started with something that my audience knows as Sunny's Fast Five. And Sunny's Fast Five are basically 5 fast questions to get to know you a little bit. And the idea is that you try to answer within 1 sentence. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So first question is real simple. Are you a morning or a night person?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's actually complicated. I used to be very much a morning person, but with the COVID, I've become more of a night person. And then unfortunately, I still get up in the morning and have a lot to do. So maybe I'm both now.
Well, it is a time of adaptability. So
Yeah.
I guess that goes for all areas of life. Now, in terms of, so the way we met is we met through the American Swiss Foundation, and you came and visit for a week in Switzerland. And so I'd love to ask you, what's your favorite memory of Switzerland?
Oh my gosh. I think obviously the first thing is the food. I love cheese, but really it's the people as well as the scenery. I mean, you just can't beat it. It's an exceptional country.
Hmm. Well, hopefully we'll have you soon back. And I wonder, in this time of COVID-19, with many of us have had more time to learn new things, is there anything you are learning right now?
I honestly, I think you kind of already hit the nail on the head, and that's adaptability. And, I'm a working mom, so it's just, how do you try to do it all when in many ways right now, I feel like the doing it all doesn't really exist. So it's just also the adaptability and being flexible, almost like as a skill that I think is part of, not just surviving and thriving in this new environment. I think we all must need to adapt to. So that's what I would say.
Hmm. And what is success to you?
Success to me is impact. No matter what organization you work for, whether you're a founder building a technology, you're running a government organization, you're a politician, you're running a country or a government, you're running a nonprofit, where you're researching, a researcher, whatever it is what is the impact you're having? Is your company mission driven? You talked about tech for good, right? So what is the impact that you're having on not just your customers, but on society writ large? And how can you reach and impact more people through innovative approaches, through technological advancements, and through developing private public partnerships and other initiatives that potentially can have tangible and positive impact around the world. So to me, it's impact, that's success.
So you wrote actually a very impactful piece, and for those who haven't read it, I absolutely recommend, and will link it in the description section of this YouTube video. But you recently wrote a New York Times opinion piece, and I'd love for you to just briefly summarize that in something like a sentence or two for those who haven't read it yet.
Sure. What made me write this piece is the realization that, we've arguably you could say there is the actual coronavirus, but the mis and disinformation that surrounds it is pretty severe and extreme on all fronts. It's not just one actor, but it's multiple actors. And what scares me the most personally is, we in the United States have an election coming up in November. So usually around any election, you have so much of disinformation. Certainly we have seen this in the last 4 years in the United States, but in Europe, there have been plenty of that prior in various countries around Europe, for example. So what scares me the most, and the sort of the premise of the piece, is that the disinformation, misinformation, or this infodemic is going to surround not just the general population, but the sort of the election itself. And it's not only going to be coming from one actor, be it a country state actor, but also non-state actors as well. It is the congruence of all of these actors and congruence of the information flooding that is specifically, I think, will be more potent, if you will. So that's part of the reason why I decided to write in what the point of the article was.
I mean, the title was Pandemic Propaganda is Coming, Be Ready for It. I wondered when I read it, why did you set the title in the future? I mean, aren't we already in the middle of this propaganda and influence campaign? Or do you think it's going to get a lot worse?
100%, you're right. We are in the middle of this, but I'm here to tell you, I think it's going to get a lot worse. And there will be multiple stages of when it gets worse, right? I mean, you can think about, like I said, in the United States, it's not just, responding to, the testing and responding to the virus. It's the reopening of the economy, reopening of the country. And then if there's more cases, additional deaths, we can potentially have this kind of yo-yo effect. So with that, there's going to come a lot of new and additional disinformation. But again, add that to the election, number one, and then let's push it forward when there's a potentially one or more vaccines on the market. And I can see a scenario where there's this, if you will, us versus them narrative between people who choose to listen to elected officials or to scientists, to their doctors, and to vaccinate, and those who choose not to. And so imagine the kind of fear that is going to create in society, not just from social media or mainstream news, other sources that you get information, but broadly in a society as well. So I actually think it's actually going to get worse. We're just at the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, I think I've said it before, you've worked your entire career at this intersection of democracy, technology, and society. And you've helped so many institutions and governments to navigate these challenges. Understanding more than most of us, what is the important thing to understand about security in the context of these influence campaigns?
I think there's three things I would say. First, when you think about security, yes, technology is part of it. And then there's of course, we can talk about bias or amplification piece of it. The other piece of it, I think that's really important to understand is human security. So there's three different aspects of security. And the human security starts with really that it's not just the sole responsibility, for technology to either thwart 100% the disinformation campaigns or where they originate. They're part of the puzzle, if you will, but so much of it starts with us, with individuals. It's almost this kind of a civics question, as I like to say. If you already have sort of your preconceived notions and your preconceived beliefs, and by the way, you may not be having them from news sources. They may be traveling through friends and family, maybe it's culture or religion, different aspects that sort of make up your belief system. It's really hard for human beings to not just be exposed. One thing is exposure, but to really think outside of the box and consider other points of view, and to kind of step away from their filter bubbles, if you will. So that is part of those are some of the vulnerabilities, I think, and on top of also having weakened democratic institutions as well. Those are some of the vulnerabilities that threat actors try to exploit. So that's a really important element of influence campaign. And then the third piece I would say is, how do you actually deter, right? Of course, certainly social media platforms, there's, writing policy, enforcing the policy, and all of it's not black or white. I think there's a lot of gray in it, all that goes into it, but also what can we do about cyber hygiene to make sure that, our systems are secure, the infrastructure is secure. So, that's also part of the influence campaign. So potential adversaries don't actually, either steal data that potentially may be harmful, and then, start the conspiracy theories or disinformations. And those are the kind of things that I think are really important. So my point is, I don't view security in just one light. I view security when it relates to influence campaigns in multiple lights.
I mean, technology is part of what amplifies a lot of these influence campaigns, and could be argued, or is argued by some, as sort of part of the problem of our time. Then again, there's also so much technology that really drives progress in this world. And I'm curious, in this particular subject, I know that I know that technology is not the entire solution to this. You mentioned it's part of a civics topic and problem. But still, what are technologies that you think are really going to also help us combat this, and maybe
Sure.
reduce some of the misinformation that is being thrown around left and right?
So absolutely. So there's two pieces. Let me just say on technology. There's the technology. Yes, there's, you can say certain technology amplifies, for social media platforms, for example, amplify narratives, that are disinformation that's already there. Okay. But first of all, they're also showing or trying to show credible content as well. We talked about this tech for good, like show when elections are happening, refer people to the right, for example, COVID-19 information. So that's just generally speaking. But I've also starting to see, certainly in this field, and again, certainly in the last several years, new technology popping up all the time and trying to counter disinformation and strengthen, if you will, society resilience, as well as within the cyberspace as well, to actually thwart potential attacks from even happening. And on the disinformation and influence campaign piece, I mean, it's everything. I know I've seen technology pop up using both AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning capabilities that focuses on credibility, really trying to understand what news are actually credible and ranking them and prioritizing them. Also, certainly on verification, verifying that those sources of news are credible, as well as fact checking. I mean, I think fact checking is also really, really important as well. So those are some of the technologies. Again, there's more and more popping up, and there's another space I would think that's ripe for this also is the educational aspect of it as well. Because one of the issues with influence campaigns, one of the big gaps that we have, is a pretty significant lack of critical thinking, and it happens to anyone. It's not just say that someone is smart or someone is dumb by any means. I mean, we all, can be victims of disinformation. So the critical piece and the sort of the education piece is also part of it.
So we're nearing already the end of this conversation, even though I'd love to dive into so many of these aspects. But I want to understand, as you are looking forward, and we are about to head into this U.S. election, but then also Europe will see a number of elections in the future. What is, as a senior tech and policy advisor on global security, what is something that makes you hopeful in all of this? What looks like a bit of a perfect storm? What is it that makes you hopeful?
I love this question. I'll tell you why. I think one of the things that I'm starting to see a good amount of are initiatives and organizations popping up, and technology as well to a degree that are really trying to go after addressing the root causes of this problem. One of them that we didn't get to touch on, which I think is huge, is polarization. And we talked a little bit about this us versus them narrative. And so I am hopeful for organizations like Million Conversations out of the United States and Make America Dinner Again, where you really are bringing people, and it's virtual too, from different perspectives to the table, people that normally you wouldn't really sit across from or listen to, because so much of it is really understanding and listening, right? So those types of initiatives and technological advances that support that and provide, and really enable that empathy side for the problem, those are the things that I think that make me particularly hopeful beyond really addressing it from countering it and strengthening security.
Well, Vera, I would like to leave my audience with still 3 pieces of advice. So I'd be wondering, these are just, again, 3 quick questions that will segue us into the sort of end of this conversation. But what is a book or what are resources, for someone who is not an expert but would love to understand more, a concerned citizen, and especially also, a lot of people who are watching this are the Forbes Under 30 community. How can we be better informed about this subject? Are there books or the resources that you would recommend?
So there's actually a ton now. And the 2 books that I'm going to recommend, which I'm excited to recommend only because I love promoting other women, particularly in this field, but in other sort of fields that at the intersection of tech and democracy and politics and society. So these are 2 up and coming books. They are not released yet, but I know the 2 women very well and just cannot, just think so highly of them. So one is How to Lose the Information War by Nina Jankowicz. Fabulous. She spent time on the ground in Europe and the former Soviet Union examining this. So I think it's going to be amazing. And then the other one is Cindy Otis, and the book is True or False, and CIA analyst, a guide to stop spotting fake news. So again, a little bit of a different take, but there's just enormous amount of resources and research out there. I can probably, if we had time, give you a whole list of amazing scholars and amazing researchers, independent, that are working with tech and with governments and civil society on this.
Oh, wonderful. I'll link them up in the description of the YouTube video. I'm also curious, you gave a shout out before to some organizations, just briefly in the last question. Could you let my audience know again, like, which organizations they should look to? Who would you like to give a shout out, and why are they awesome?
So the 2 ones are actually, primarily U.S. specific, but I think the effort can be replicated, across, certainly. But the ones here in the United States, it's the Millions of Conversations and Make America Dinner Again. And again, these 2 are really focused on really addressing polarization issue or that aspect of the problem, and really trying to bring people together in different sides. So
Yeah.
I think it's just
And
great.
is there any parting piece of advice that you would want to leave my audience with, particularly as we, as COVID-19 continues to disrupt our day-to-day, and we're trying to understand really which information sources do we believe, which ones not? What can we as citizens do to make the influence campaigns weaker than they are today?
2 things. The first is think critically about the information that you're consuming or in the information that you're seeing. I like to say think before you click, but really think critically about it. And sometimes we inadvertently spread misinformation. And the second is, obviously I talked about US election in November. There are many elections in Europe coming up, in 2020 and beyond. Vote. It's the best thing that you can do for your democracy. I cannot underscore that so much power resides also in individuals and citizens of respective countries.
Vera, thank you so much for such an insightful conversation, for your time, for your expertise. I've learned a lot, and I'm really grateful that there are people like you out there who are looking to keep our democracies safe, especially also in the digital sphere. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
So, well, on the sunny side, this has been another absolutely wonderful conversation. We are here going to continue at 5:30 on the Forbes 15 channel with my colleague and editor-in-chief of Forbes, Klaus Fiala, and his show, Greatest Business Minds. He'll be having the CFO of Porsche, Lutz Meschke, on air, so tune back in at 5:30 p.m. This has been On the Sunny Side. It airs weekly at 4 p.m. on the Forbes 15 YouTube channel. It's been, once again, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everybody who tuned in, and see you next week, Thursday, 4 p.m. on the Sunny Side.